This week on the show, Na'Vi wins Counterpit Season 2, we take a look at Groups C and D at MLG Columbus, and Cloud9 have won the iBUYPOWER Spring Invitational. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Jason Moses O'Toole, and it's time to kick things off with a frag clip. This week's clip is Netherlands versus Sweden at Clan-Based Nations Cup 14, where ChrisJ picks up a huge AWP ace. Unfortunately, the Dutch team would not advance from their group, finishing with just 2 wins in 5 games. Team France would instead go on to win the event. Our first story this week is the Counterpit Season 2 finals, which took place in Split, hopefully pronounced correctly, in Croatia between the 17th and 18th of March. Now, Jason, this was an $80,000 prize pool and single elimination best of 3, so pretty serious business. As we get the graphics up on screen, we'll see this was essentially just a big bracket, right? So we've got Virtus.Pro, Immunity, Na'Vi, Flipside, all the way down there. And went straight through to that grand final over on the right, where it was Na'Vi versus Astralis. However, let's start on the left side, and the first match I want to talk about here, Jason, as you might expect, is EnVy versus NRG, because, I mean, well, we talk about upsets in Counter-Strike, but this is the upset to end all upsets, I think. I don't think anybody would have seen NRG topping EnVyUs in the way they did. No. A lot of uncharacteristic mistakes as well. What went wrong for EnVyUs in this game, and how worried should we be as EnVyUs fans, I guess?
I mean, if you're an EnVyUs fan, you should be really worried. Just because, I mean, even with the level they've been playing at, the slump they've been in, and how weak they've looked for some time now, this is still just an upset of epic proportions. This is one of the biggest upsets we've had on Global Offensive, and to have it leading up to the major, just 2 to 3 weeks before the major occurs, that's scary. As well, just going through a roster change. I mean, I don't think anyone expected this change from Devil for Kiyoshima to just be this magical fix. Obviously, it's going to take time. Even before that roster change, you could see EnVyUs was making changes in how they wanted to play the game that was causing them to struggle a little bit at times. But still, I mean, this is just... It seems like they've lost a little bit of that swagger, that confidence that they've had to just kind of trade their way into bomb sites to unleash the individual skill on this roster. And yeah, it comes down to some of those weird mistakes, like losing clutch situations to inexperienced teams. I mean, this NRG team, even in North America, we talked about the addition of Gabi, Lagia. These are not highly skilled players. So we talked about how even in the North American region that those players would struggle talent-wise against other players in North America. And here they are against EnVy, having really good games. The stand-in Tabson played phenomenal. Justin and Silent had the games of their careers. I mean, everything kind of turned into a perfect storm for this upset to occur.
And Silent, of course, had that 1 versus 4 clutch in one of the overtimes, I think it was, on Mirage, right? That was just phenomenal from those guys. Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting because I mean, Silent's a player who I've, because I've played with him personally a little bit, I've talked to him a little bit on a personal level. I've always kind of had my eye on seeing how he would improve in the North American scene, but he hasn't raised too many heads within the scene, outside of that. So I mean, it remains to be seen if he can continue that kind of effort, him and Justin both. But I think this is more just look at we've talked about the leadership in North America is so lacking, and look at when Gabi comes in and has this team with players who no one really knows about, no one really expects anything from, how just that leadership helps them get this kind of an upset, whether it's the practice and preparation leading up to it or the composure that he helps instill in game during a live match. This is all positive, so you can see the impact that a good leader can have on a team.
All right, well, EnVy did lose that match and are clearly still on a team on the way down, or just treading water, so it seems. A team that's looking a little bit upward, or I guess we saw a little bit of life from this tournament, was Virtus.Pro, up at the top of this bracket, as we see it back on screen now. So they got that 2-0 win over Immunity. I think everybody, even given Virtus.Pro's recent performances, I think most people would have picked them over Immunity in that game. But then, of course, they went on to play Natus Vincere, Na'Vi. They lost 2-0. However, they were pretty close games to Na'Vi. I think there was a 14-16 and a 12-16 in there, right? Bode well for Virtus.Pro. Are we starting to see a little bit of chemistry coming together before Columbus, do you think?
Not Nah, I mean when you're dead in the water, when the expectations are so low, like anything's going to look pretty cool, right? I mean, listen, it's good that Snacks had a little bit of a rebound tournament, but that doesn't give me any optimism for the major because looking
Right.
at the long term, that has to be something that's a little bit more consistent to actually make me excited to see what he has. His recent form has been very weak as well as the rest of the team. Taz and Neo also, I mean this whole team is still struggling very much, and one win over Immunity, 2-0, no matter how close your matches are against Navi. I
Mm.
mean, this is a team that we expect, and it's the pedigree they've built that they're going to be contending for the championship, and just, playing some close matches but losing is not good enough for a team like this. So, still very worried for them going into the major, and even after that, heading into the aftermath of Columbus.
Dude, I was trying to build a little bit of optimism behind VP there, but
That's what
no,
I do. I
Jason.
just shut that shit down, Jack.
Moses says no, so it's a no. What about, just let me quickly pick your brains on Torpedo and Immunity as well, because these are two teams that we never really see much of in big international competitions. What were your kind of thoughts around these two guys?
I don't know much about Torpedo, to be honest with you. And I didn't really get to catch too much of this event, and that wasn't the match that I focused on, especially against Astralis.
Yeah,
Immunity, the Australians, they just had their own big shuffle in that scene. I know some of the guys over there have been, very active on Twitter and, some YouTube videos talking about how their scene
yeah.
just got all thrown very, very hectic recently. After all the qualifiers ended and the dust kind of settled in that, then they just threw it up with roster changes. So not really expecting too much out of the Australian teams for the time being, just until they kind of get settled in and they see what's going to happen. Um, but I mean, I think there's some very skilled players over in Australia right now. So from what I've seen when I saw in Taipei earlier in January, just talking to some of the analysts, there's a couple young guns that are really really talented that they're high on. So it's all going to be about how they develop moving forward into the future.
Yeah, and of course we look forward to seeing those guys at more international events in future as well. Let's jump over and talk about the right-hand side of this bracket. So there's two semi-finals and the grand final, of course, which was Navi versus Astralis. And yeah, we've talked about Navi versus Virtus.Pro. That was a 2-0 sweep, and Astralis put NRG back in their rightful place, I guess.
Yeah.
Balance was restored. Astralis won that 2-0 to set up this grand final between Navi and Astralis. I assume you got a chance to watch that game,
Yeah.
Jason. How did that seem to you?
Guardian. I mean, this was just an outstanding event from Guardian. It was unreal. And that was good. That's where you look at this event and it's like this one bounce back event because he had a very, very weak Katowice.
Hmm.
He put out that picture on Twitter. I think he had, his hand was in a brace. He was injured a little bit. I'm not
Yeah.
exactly sure what that was, but you could see there's kind of a reason for that slump in Katowice and him bouncing back here and just being this dominant. It was absolutely insane to watch. He is a force to be reckoned with. And this is just kind of Navi. They've been consistently in the top four for, of every event essentially for a couple months now, going back towards Cluj. So I mean, this is one of the best teams in the world, and they kind of showed it here obviously by winning it, but just um, really nice performance from the overall Guardian, just leading the way.
Yeah, Guardian, just a couple of facts, was statistically the best player in the tournament. He had a 1.39 player rating, 1.67 KDR, and Navi as a team had 4 players in the top 10. So,
I think I,
yeah, as you... Sorry, go on.
I think the only stat that Guardian didn't top was assists, which is like impossible for an offer to get assists. Like it just is like that's the
Yeah.
only statistic that he wasn't the best player in at this event. Just an ungodly performance out of him.
Yeah, we'll give him a free pass on the
Yeah, on the
assist, I
assists.
think. Speaking of excuses, I guess, Astralis finished in second place. Do we give them a little bit of an excuse, I guess, because the major's just around the corner, potentially they're holding back strats? I mean, do teams even do that? Is that something we can maybe chalk Astralis' loss up to?
No, I mean I'm not gonna ever put it to holding back strats. I think the current meta of this game, anyways, isn't very strat based. There's not. I mean, when you the entire concept of holding back strats is like you wanna hide some kind of sick execution onto a bomb site or
Yeah.
something like that. It's much more freewheeling meta that we're playing in CS:GO right now. Now there are things that they might be holding back. Maybe they have some, like we saw at Katowice, Navi, brought out some of those triple boosts.
Hmm.
And to great effect. They could have held those for Columbus, but it's not strat. Maybe a couple tricks here and there, but no, I mean Astralis, they don't get a pass for that. Um, yeah, I mean I mean, listen, it was good that they got to the finals and everything. They kept up that trend they have where they don't really lose to teams they shouldn't lose to. They don't struggle early on in events. It's when they get into later stages. And it's not even in this situation. I mean, we can talk all we want about, the entire tendency of Astralis to choke or struggle in finals and semifinals or everything. But I mean, to be
Yeah.
completely honest, they just ran into Guardian who wasn't going to lose. Like, I mean, let's focus on the positives here because I mean, I don't think that there's anything that Astralis did wrong. It's just when Guardian's playing at that level, Navi's a very, very scary team, a very difficult team to beat. And it was a really good event out of them. So that's kind of what I'd rather focus on because we saw, I mean, they beat a lot of the teams. They crushed the teams they're supposed to. 16-6 versus Torpedo, 16-2 versus Torpedo, 16-3 versus NRG, 16-9 as well. I mean, they
Yeah.
dominated all the teams they were expected to. So not really dropping the ball. They just ran into a really, really tough Navi squad.
All right, well, let's leave that there in that case. That was the Counterpit Season 2 finals, which took place in Split, Croatia. Again, hopefully pronounced correctly. And before we move over to topic number 2, let's jump over to Sedikist, who has a CS Fact of the Week for us.
Thanks, Jack. In Counter-Strike 1.6 and Condition 0, the Tactical Shield was the only item that protected players from both bullet and grenade damage. Expensive and impractical, the Tactical Shield would restrict the view of the CT player when deployed, as well as limiting their weapon selection to pistols, grenades, and the knife. However, it also made them completely invulnerable from certain angles, and for this reason, the Tactical Shield was banned from competitive tournaments and disappeared for good, thank God, by Counter-Strike Source. Although the Tactical Shield is not in Global Offensive, some files have a property called Can Equip with Shield, which suggests that at one point, perhaps it was in consideration for the game.
For our second story this week, we're going to take a look at Groups C and D at MLG Columbus, which is, of course, the Valve-sponsored major coming up in, well, about a week's time, 29th to the 31st of March. Now, Jason, as we talked about last week, this is the first $1 million major. First place gets $500,000, and it's also the first major to be hosted on North American soil, which I know you guys are particularly proud about. Just a note to the viewers, the reason we're talking about Groups C and D here and not A and B is because we talked about A and B last week. So if you want to check out those previews as well, go and watch episode 39 of PopFlash. You're a week late. So, as we get Groups C and D up on screen, we'll see Group C on the left has EnVyUs, Astralis, Gambit, and CLG, and Group D on the right has Na'Vi, Virtus.Pro, G2, and Cloud9. Now, Jason, over in Group C, Envy and Astralis you'd think would be the favourites here, but given Envy's recent performance, perhaps not. What do you think about this? Do you think they've got any chance of losing to Gambit or CLG in this group?
Absolutely. CLG was able to take a map off them and play them pretty close on a couple earlier in the year at it was the game show tournament, I believe it was. So I mean, that's a little bit scary there. But also, I mean, CLG in the North American region hasn't exactly inspired any confidence either. Over in Pro League, they're towards the bottom of the standings right now. They have like 3 wins. I think they might even be statistically eliminated from making it to the finals in the UK. So they're having a very, very rough time at the moment, which is a little bit scary. So actually, I mean, this group now becomes wide open. I think Astralis, I don't think they'll have any issue moving on. But like Gambit now has an opportunity to take out EnVyUs, who's a weakened team, and take out CLG. Gambit looked pretty good at the qualifier, so this all of a sudden opens the door for them to make it through, and that would be pretty cool. But definitely Envy and CLG both slumping, not living up to their potential at the moment, so it could be a little bit of a sticky situation for him going into this, where CLG had to have been happy that they see Envy in this level, but now all of a sudden Gambit even is a scary squad for them to have to face up against.
All right, so it sounds like we're saying this group's pretty wide open, but surely Astralis are a lock, right? They're
Yeah,
not
I mean, even if for some reason they drop some matches, in which they generally don't, that's usually the calling card of it. Astralis is that they just don't lose to teams below them. But even if they do, I don't see any of these teams being able to beat them in a best of 3 to move on in second place. So I mean, they should go out in first, but I don't think there's any danger of them getting knocked out in the groups.
All right, well, let's jump over to Group D, and again, this is Na'Vi, Virtus.Pro, G2, and Cloud9. So, I mean, Na'Vi and Virtus.Pro we just talked a little bit about in the previous topic, but we'll run through again now. So, Na'Vi have had a pretty impressive year so far overall. I mean, they were finalists at the previous major. They lost to Envy in the grand final. They won Counterpit, as we literally just talked about. This is their sorry, Counterpit was their second title this year and the third time they've appeared in a grand final. So it's starting to look pretty good for Na'Vi. Do we have them as number one in this group, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. They should not have any issue moving on. They're one of the best teams in the world. If Guardian shows up at this level, there's no one. I mean, even Skadoodle in his current form can't even challenge against Guardian right now, where we saw some of that battle, around Cologne of last year. I mean, that's not even a question at this point. Guardian is just, fully taken over that title. No problems there. So yeah, Na'Vi, this is their group to lose. They're much like Astralis in the sense that they should be going out in first place, but much like Astralis, even if they do drop some matches, I don't see any of these teams beating them in a best of three.
Skadoodle's still capable of pulling out a phenomenal performance from game to game, though, right? You don't see even the slightest chance of an upset here?
No, I don't think Cloud9. I think the only team really that could challenge Na'Vi. I mean, Virtus.Pro just played them in some close games, so I mean, you never know with them. But I think G2 is the likeliest to be able to beat Na'Vi in a best of three. Cloud9, I don't think has a chance against Na'Vi in a BO3. Not at all. Even though Skadoodle has the capability of just going off for a map, he still has all that talent. Obviously, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Guardian's just playing too well, and there's also too many pieces now around Guardian that step up from time to time when he needs some assistance.
What was the thing, I think I saw this on Reddit earlier this week, about Stewie potentially calling some of Cloud9's T-side strats? Was there any weight to that or not?
I think he called on a Mirage match, but I think they've just kind of, he's been adding more to the tactical discussion for the team when they're prepping in practice. They've also brought on Irakanji, an old 1.6 in-game leader, who's helping them out in practice. I don't believe he'll be at the major with them. I guess he could be. I'm not sure. I don't think they've released any info on that. But I mean, between Irakanji and now Stewie also chiming in on the tactical side of things, that's kind of the situation they're in right now, and it's been working in North America. They've been looking much better. They're one of the only of the four North American teams that really seems to be on improving leading up to the major. Everyone else seems to be still struggling. Liquid's dropped some uncharacteristic matches. CLG's not looking good. Splice. I mean, it is what it is. But Cloud9 seems to have found some things that's making him work. I think Freakazoid's playing at a good level. I think Stewie's looking much improved from where he was at the beginning of his tenure at Cloud9. And I mean, this is much like Group C, where this is very wide open, and it seems silly to say Na'Vi should have no issue, but these other three teams, VP slumping, G2, have their ups and downs. And also, I mean, you got to think Existence almost feels like cursed for him at majors, getting out of groups, whatever it might be. So Cloud9, I mean, there's an opportunity for her to move on in second place. However unlikely it might be, just depends on which of these teams are going to show up to play.
If you had to put your money on it, or your skins, or whatever people bet these days, would you go for Virtus.Pro, G2, Cloud9? Who's the best bet here?
G2.
Yeah,
I've actually been pretty impressed with some of the things I've seen out of them, despite some slumping. It is still a little bit up and down, but I think Existence is now pretty consistently been assisting in the fragging department. RPK's hit a really good level as well. If he's been pretty consistent. They have the X factor of Shocks, who can always just go off, and just, I mean, even beyond that, it's just the slump of Virtus.Pro that's extended. Cloud9 is still very much a CT sided team. They don't really have too much to offer on their T sides, and I don't think at this level you can expect to win very many maps, much less a best of three, when you're relying so much on just a huge CT side. And also, this is the other interesting thing. Just one more storyline. Virtus.Pro has always destroyed Cloud9, has always destroyed American teams in general. They feel so confident. So no matter what slump they're going to be in, going up against Cloud9, they're still going to feel supremely confident in their ability to just dominate that team.
Last but not least, I've got some quick-fire questions for you, Jason. So, quick as you can, give me your thoughts on the following news stories from the week. First of all, Cloud9 win the iBUYPOWER Spring Invitational.
Yeah, good showing from them. Really good stuff. They played Liquid in the finals, and actually it was pretty close best of three series. That was a long day for those teams. They played a lot of best of threes between that and also some Pro League matches. So a lot of Counter-Strike was played over the weekend, but really good for them. I mean, we've been expecting this team, with the struggles of Sean Gares leaving, to at some point relinquish the throne of the best in North America, but they just keep holding on to it, and now they're improving as well. They're starting to get much better with this team. So this result, at least within the North American region, is a little bit promising.
That's it for this week. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Jason Moses O'Toole.
And we'll see you next week with another episode of PopFlash.